Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Shea is here for the weekend and we wanted to film a video.
Let's go!
If you don't know Shea, she's an American living in Bologna. Do you want to talk about yourself?
Yeah. I've been living in Bologna for almost 8 months now. I am studying Italian there at a language school. And today we wanted to talk about some of the differences between living in Rome and living in Bologna.
Shea also lived in Rome for a time. I have never been to Bologna, so I can't really compare them, but between the two of us, I think we can share enough information about our own personal experiences. So I wanted to start with some stats, because maybe you've also never been to Rome or Bologna, and we both get a lot of questions from people. Hello. We both get a lot of questions from people wanting to move to Italy, and a lot of people ask us, what city should I move to? And I think that totally depends on the kind of experience you're wanting. Rome is a huge city. There's almost 3 million people living here, and how many in Bologna?
There's just under 400,000. There's 388,000 people living in Bologna, so quite the difference.
Yeah, and between the two, they each have their own different vibe. In Rome, it's very touristy. It's a major European city.
And Bologna, I definitely feel more of a student vibe because of the huge university there. It feels way less touristy. I definitely will encounter a few tourists and hear English every once in a while, but it feels way more authentically Italian.
Between the two cities, the cost of living, we looked up stats, is pretty much the same, which is a little surprising. I thought in Rome rent would be much higher than in other cities, but your experience in Bologna is different.
Yeah, when I went to Bologna, I thought, first of all, it would be easy to find an apartment and that it would be a lot cheaper than here in Rome. But when we talked about rent prices within the city center, they're actually pretty similar, the cost of living in the city center and outside of the city center. First, we're going to go over some general things about living in Italy that we have personally experienced after living here, and then we'll dive deeper into the actual differences between Rome and Bologna.
Yeah. And this is, keep in mind that we're both Americans, so it's comparing like life in America to moving to Italy. We were talking about this yesterday because we were trying to go buy just some, I have a hair in my eye. We were trying to go buy some Christmas decorations and we needed just command hooks, and that little thing like that would be so easy to find in the States, and here in Italy we don't know where to buy that, and so you have to go from store to store to store, and you probably won't even find it at all. It's things like that that things are just more difficult to find sometimes, and one little errand can take you all day going to several stores.
Sometimes you just have to give up.
Great mindset. Great attitude.
What's the word?
Just quit. Give up.
End of video. Another thing that I was not used to when I moved here to Italy were the transportation strikes that happen every so often, where buses, trains, anything and everything, the forms of transportation won't work for several hours, or sometimes in Bologna, a whole day. And then you have to figure out some other way to get to where you need to go, which is, again, usually complicated.
And then you'll be late.
Yeah, classic.
Things that we normally do in the States that are kind of effortless too, like finding a gym membership, taking a Pilates class, or like getting your nails done, it seems to be much more accessible and like cheaper in the States compared to here. Gyms are like very tiny, they don't have a lot of equipment, and they're super expensive. Same thing with getting your nails done. It'll be like 3 times the price than it is in the States sometimes. So those are just some differences that we've noticed.
And then the next topic is about making friends while abroad, and I get a lot of questions about this, so actually in my video that I'm going to do on my channel, we'll dive a little bit deeper into this. But obviously making friends as an expat abroad is really, really difficult. I think for me, in my experience, because I live in Bologna and there's a lot of young students there, it's a little bit easier for me to make friends. I've been able to make a lot of Italian friends and people who are studying there. But I think in Rome, it might be a little bit more challenging.
I would agree. It's really difficult to make friends in Rome. So now, the differences between living in Rome and living in Bologna. One of the major things that I've been dealing with lately, and that we get to talk about a lot, is just the fact that in Rome, people tend to never speak to me in Italian, no matter how fluent I'm becoming or how confidently I walk into a shop. They just switch to English and refuse to let me speak Italian, and that's become so frustrating for me, and it's totally the opposite experience that Shea has had in Bologna.
Yeah, we talk about this all the time because I tell her how I don't have that experience in Bologna, which I love and is actually one of the reasons why I chose to study there in Bologna, because if I'm learning the language, I want to be able to use it and practice with people. In my experience, a lot of stores that I've gone into, a lot of the people tell me they actually don't speak English, so it works in my favor because we have to use Italian. And also I've noticed that the people are a lot friendlier when it comes to me speaking Italian and trying to speak Italian and then continuing the conversation in Italian. Of course, there are some rare instances where people will switch to English, mainly in the center where there are some more touristy spots. But for the most part, I'm always able to have interactions in Italian, and people are really happy and welcoming when I try to speak Italian with them.
And for me, that I never get that ever, and I'm actually shocked if someone does speak to me in Italian. I want to give them a hug because they're like the only one who ever lets me try to speak. And it's frustrating because you're trying to live here, you're trying to learn the language, and you just want to be able to practice. So in Rome, don't be surprised if people just refuse to speak to you in Italian. And it could be for several reasons. You know, maybe your accent is bad. Maybe they think that you're not fluent enough. Maybe you just look like a tourist. And maybe they're trying to be polite and accommodate you. So you never really know. I think it has nothing to do with you. It's just the fact that it's Rome and it's such a big touristic major European city. Oh, I wanted to be... She goes on dates and speaks in Italian the whole time. She makes friends and speaks in Italian the whole time. She gets so much more practice than I do, and I'm very jealous. And I'm so impressed. If you guys want to hear her speak Italian, go check out her channel because she does vlogs in Italian. She's just become so confident and fluent. Thank you.
So another thing that I've noticed living in Bologna now versus when I was back in Rome, the transportation in Bologna is, I would say, very good. The buses that I've taken are usually always on time, or if they're not, just a 2-minute, 3-minute difference. I've never been waiting around for a bus unless there was a strike, and I was not aware there was a strike. But yes, Bologna buses, for the most part, actually run very well and on time.
And then there's Rome.
Totally opposite.
You never know when the bus is going to come. Metros are usually reliable, but they often close different stops because they're doing some works or something.
Yeah, when I got here, when I arrived here yesterday, I tried to get to the metro, and there were signs everywhere saying that this station was closed, this metro station was closed. It was very confusing.
And I specifically told her to go to that train station because it was easier to get to my house.
It was not.
But it was fine.
Yeah, it turned out fine.
So bureaucracy is something you're going to have to be very comfortable dealing with if you want to move to Italy. We both talk about bureaucracy on our channels. In Rome, it's not fun, it's not easy, but
I don't think it's fun anywhere.
some things could be easier here in Rome compared to other cities, and vice versa. So Shea recently had the hardest time doing some bureaucratic thing.
Trying to renew my permit to stay was a months-long process, mainly because I had all of my documents ready, but you have to find the specific kit of documents that you can only get at the post offices here. And I went to probably 10 different post offices around Bologna over the span of 2 months trying to find this kit.
It's basically like an application if you need to renew papers.
Yeah. Every time they told me, we're out. And then if you try to follow up and say, when will there be more? No one knows. They go, And that's very typical. It's like, we'll see. And it was getting down to the wire where I needed to renew my permit. and I was not able to find a kit. I had to go outside of the center pretty far to finally get one.
I was about ready to go to one here in Rome and mail it to her.
Yeah, she asked me if she needed to mail me one.
Yeah. And in Rome, it's like the headquarters of the post office is located here. We never really run out of those things because it's just a bigger city. So that's one issue where Bologna might be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, it's a really big problem right around that time of year in September when a bunch of new students are coming to the university and they have to do this process because they need the permit to stay. And so this happens around this time of year all the time in Bologna. Just so you know, apparently it's like a huge issue because all the kits are out since all these students are trying to go get them.
All at the same time. So the general vibe of the cities, from what I've heard Shea talk about Bologna, seem to be quite different. Rome is such a big city and there's so many different neighborhoods that you'll find different vibes in different neighborhoods. Like if you want a young, lively, like nightlife neighborhood, you could go to Monti or Trastevere and definitely get that. But in general, Rome is much more touristy. And like Shea said earlier, Bologna is more like young people and students. But specifically, Rome in the winter, like December, January, February, is my favorite time in the city because most of the tourists are gone and Rome feels a lot more local, and you can be out walking around and you see mostly Italian people, and I love when Rome feels more authentically Italian and not just like touristy. So
yeah, I've had the same experience. I was telling her I've been back to Rome twice since living in Bologna, and I came in the summer and then a little bit before fall, and it was an entirely different experience than what I'm having right now. I'm back to loving Rome again since being here because it just is way more calm. You're able to enjoy the sights a little bit more when there's not a ton of people shoving past you or giant tour groups just everywhere. It's definitely a lot more of an enjoyable experience, and like Alyssa said, you really get to experience more of Rome and it feels more local.
One thing, I don't know if you guys are like this, but whenever I think of a city, I think of a color. Like if I say London, what color do you think of? Rome has a color, and it's like this light orange, kind of like these buildings around us, this wall, like light orangey, beigey, tan. Anyway, that's just the color I think of when I think of Rome, and she said Bologna has a color.
Yeah, Bologna has like a deep orange or deep red color. All of the buildings are just these really nice rich colors of red and orange and some yellows as well. And we also have the porticos everywhere, which basically are just like these giant arches over all of our sidewalks, which are really beautiful because all of them are super unique, different designs, and some of them are also different colors as well.
Beautiful. One thing that I've talked about in one of my videos, and I want to do a longer video about, is safety. In Rome, I tend to not really go out at night that often, especially not by myself, and there are neighborhoods that I specifically avoid being alone in, and so safety is a little bit more of an issue in Rome, and Shea said that Bologna is different.
Yeah, I have never felt unsafe in Bologna, even times when I have been walking alone at night, which I know is not something I should be doing, but I've never once felt unsafe walking alone or walking around at night. Even just during the day, there aren't really many places in Bologna that I feel like I have to avoid because of safety reasons. And also with things like catcalling or people making you feel uncomfortable, I've actually only had that situation happen to me once in the entire 8 months of living in Bologna. Whereas here in Rome, it happened all the time.
Yeah, every day, everywhere you go. Right outside my front door. Catcalling, being harassed, yeah, all of that. So Rome's very different. One thing that Americans love to do, and I get asked this all the time, is like, where do you like to study, or is there a place you can take your laptop and work? And that kind of cafe culture just is not a thing in Rome, at least. Like, there's not cafes you can go to and just work at. In fact, they'll probably ask you to pack up and leave because they don't want people hanging around. So
I would say probably in Italy that's the general idea is that you don't bring your laptop to have a coffee. But in Bologna, because, again, I think because of the bigger student population, there are a lot of places that are really well known for that, and it's totally expected. You're not going to get a weird look if you start working on your laptop at these cafes. So I would say in Bologna, there's definitely a lot more of that. And there also are a lot of really nice study spots that people will share on their different Instagram accounts if you want to find like really cool study spots, different libraries that you can work in as well around Bologna.
Mm-hmm. I think in Rome there are a few places. I just personally don't often bring my laptop and go work in public. I prefer to be home, but yeah. So the last thing for this video, and let me know if you guys want a second video because this is fun to film together, but is the different variety of like vegan options or gluten-free options. And in Italy it's not the same as in America. You feel like you could get vegan, gluten-free, whatever, everywhere in America. Italy's different in general, but then in Rome, because it's a bigger city, I'd say there are more options.
In Bologna, it's pretty limited. There are definitely the spots that are well known to only be vegan or vegetarian. For the most part, there are options at a bakery. For example, there might be 1 or 2 pastries that are gluten-free, but there definitely aren't a lot of spots for people who have different food allergies, or for people who are vegetarian or vegan, for example, especially in Bologna because there's so much meat there. It is a little difficult if you are vegan or vegetarian. There might be just one option for you on a menu.
Yep. That's all for this video. If you guys have more questions, write them in the comments down below, and we would love to do a second video in the future. If you haven't checked out Shea's channel, go over. I will link it up in the cards and down below. Subscribe to her channel. She has great Italian content. Be sure and stay tuned on her channel as well for the video that we're filming together. I'll see you guys in the next video. Ciao!
Ciao!